So, greetings. Many thanks for being with us to help commemorate 25 years for the Muhatta Palace Museum. By way of introduction, I am Saima Zaidi, additional curator here. Welcome. Welcome to the sixth event of our distinguished lecture series titled Sadequain in Paris, Conversation between Ali Majid and Hameed Haroon. Both passionately devoted to the arts and in fact possessing art collections that are worthy of museums. I do say so. The conversation will be followed by a 20-minute sublime musical recital with Khamisa Fakir Sahab on the surando, Abdur Rahman Sahab playing the Sindhi banjo, and Muntar Sahab on the tabla. Also, I would like to draw your attention to the book, the magnum opus, The Holy Sinner, which is available today. And a sparkling second edition by the Endowment Fund Trust. To underscore, and to really, this is the detail that we really like to share and we are very proud of, is that the first edition is being sold now for £2,500 in auction houses in the UK. Finally, 6 events await you in February. So please mark your calendars. And now, this is what we're looking at. So now, welcoming and inviting Ali Majid Sahab with Hameed Haroon. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, close friends, regulars from the Muhatta community, many new faces, enough to justify a constant rise and fall and innovation in what is happening in the Muhatta Palace. First of all, I simply want to tell you, factually, it is the 25th year of the Muhatta Palace Museum. In a country where institutions seldom have that kind of longevity, for a cultural institution to be formed in the shadow, in the twilight of democracy in the 1990s, to live through autocracies, hybrid democracies, and what else? There's a certain vision in a team. Tonight, I want to commemorate this vision. The Sadequain exhibition at the turn of the century in the Muhatta Palace Museum became one of the defining faces of the Muhatta Palace Museum. It launched a whole new string of exhibitions, publications, lectures, and events in which so many of you have been present. Particularly, I want to thank the authors of the Holy Sinner Catalogue, which sold out its first edition. I'm proud to say I donated the royalties due to me as owner of the book and the manuscript to the Muhatta Palace Museum, so it will be reinvested in the cultural framework. And the second edition is done not by the Muhatta Palace Museum, but by the Endowment Fund Trust. Once again, I have donated the royalties for it to be absorbed in the restoration of old monuments in the interior of Sin, which the Endowment Fund Trust concerns itself. I also want to elaborate a little on what Simon spoke about, which is that we have 6 exciting events coming up in February, and we cap with the 7th just before Ramzan, the beginning of March. The first event is in a sense already here, sitting in the front row, is my beloved, fabulous, beautiful poet from Pakistan, Zahra Nigar, who will be leading and conducting the discussion on Urdu Shahri Pakistan, poetry, and will be focusing, among others, on Mir Kabir, Khalid, Iqbal, and Faiz. And I have requested her, when you do come to her event, be as harsh and as attemptedly endearing as I'm going to be. She is going to start with a recital of her own poem sung in her inimical style. And although she says I'm too old to do that, I would say, Zara, you're very young. After that, a visitor from abroad, the inimitable Sadequain, who is a banker and coming from London to speak about his family and the creation of the Mohatta Palace in Clifton all those decades ago, maybe 100 years ago. And he's proud, he says, of his institutions, his father's institutions, whether the Hindu Gymkhana or the Mohatta Palace, being used for such vigorous cultural work. Napa is where the Hindu Gymkhana is, and of course the Mohatta Palace Museum, he is an avid fan of. The third event is Nahi Asfar, who will be launching a kind of preview of her 8-volume Balochistan Nama on the culture, and the rich culture, the history, and the tribes of Balochistan. And that has been a 13-year work in the making, dedicated to the memory of her son, her late son, who died in New York of cancer that long time ago. She will be speaking, and the recital of Baloch and Ravi, war and romantic ballads, will take place after that. In Zara Appa's event, there will be a sitar concert, a small, short recital, not because I'm a ruthless synthesizer, not because I remember the variety programs of my youth. When I was 6 and 7 years old, when cabaret artists, comedians, film stars, and singers would participate in these variety events. It's not variety, it's linked curating, and for that we owe thanks to Saima and the director of the museum, Nasreen Askari. I would like to thank, I'm sorry about this, I would like to thank the authors of The Holy Sinner, Hameed Haroon, who was here 2 weeks ago but is still recovering and is not with us in the music recital and in today's events. He's with us. Farida Said, who I don't know if she's arrived, and of course Surah Yusuf, the 3 authors of The Holy Sinner, and of course there is Salima Hashmi, who curated the exhibition, which I was co-curator for. So having thanked them, I think the Holy Sinner inaugurated an era where Mohatta became known as the flag bearer of the good news about the Sadequain revolution. Maybe a little too late. Sadequain was dead, he died in 1987, and I think now it must be 35, 36 odd years since he passed away. But I think that Duria Qazi will support us when I say that the most incredible jump in Sadequain values occurred in the European auction markets, in Sotheby's, in Christie's, where the margins of appreciation were as high as 200%, 250%, 300%. And Sadequain became known as the most exciting artist that Pakistan had produced in its growing years, not least of all because of the excitement generated by his unique creative vision. In a funny way, I today hand over that paper to the crown, which was given to me with the Holy Sinner, to the new wave of Sadequain writing. It's post-Holy Sinner, it's remarkable. Ali is a banker, not particularly fond of bankers, but I know enough to know his views of Sadequain are compelling, well-researched, and you will find out for yourself. So having put all this together, people ask, why is Fakir Khabiso playing his Surindo after Ali's talk? And my answer is, go back to your Sadequain. The most compelling image in Sadequain's work, which appears at various times, what starts with Judas hanging himself, it's only a question of a head, proceeds in a large part of Sadequain's oath with Salman walking the Sufi Sarmad walking with his head in his hands up the steps of the Jame Masjid. Sarmad is at the heart of Sadequain. The Sarmad, the gory image which people would say, what a gory image. Why are we looking at it? Is actually the Sufi's commitment to the beloved, to a sight of the beloved, and to sacrifice. So today, Khabiso Fakir will play what is the Muhatta Palace's tradition of the Sarmad of Sadequain, which is Latif's Sur Surat, in which Rai de Arch, as I will tell you later, sacrifices his head in pursuit of meeting with the beloved in musical ecstasy. So the program is carefully grouped together. After A Tale of Two Cities, Multan and Uch, where you will have in February, you will have then Dr. Tanveer, you will have Yasmin Chima, and you will have Hassan Ali Khan speaking on Multan and Uch and its culture. We will then go to our grand gala celebration concert, hopefully not the last of the great after concerts that Muhatta has sponsored over the years. There will be 3,000 or 4,000 people come early, book early, and there is never any disruption or disorder in these concerts. She will be there on the 27th to wish Muhatta a happy 25th birthday. And on the 28th, there's a gentleman sitting up there very quietly, trying not to be conspicuous, next to Divya Kazi. His name is Razi Ahmed. The Lahore Literary Festival has given us a magnificent gift. 3 of its prime speakers who are coming to Lahore from the international market, and he will be bringing them to Karachi to watch the Abda concert with us. He's one of our oldest supporters, and this is his birthday gift to Muhatta. Happy birthday, Muhatta, at 25. And it closes with Durya Kazi and Saima Zaidi giving that slice of vernacular culture, Mazar Bazaar, and its vision into the future. This is Muhatta's gift to the people of Karachi, a way of saying thank you to our patrons and to our audiences who have stood by us. I hope you will continue to stand by us as we fight the battle in the courts, as we will fight preventing takeover as a medical college and as a converted medical college by the heirs of our Jinnah. And I would like to acknowledge that the children of Ibadat Yar Khan, the lawyer in the Shiri Jinnah Trust, who was part of that gift to the Sindh government, a gift that was purchased, but a gift nevertheless, is here to signify support with us today. And so is Tariq Kaisa, who's busy putting up the plinths for the large colonial statues that were excavated 30 feet under the ground from Frere Hall. So we hope, as our new annex gets built this year, we hope to have a 200 people basement auditorium, which will allow us to continue our programs in summer so that New Jahanbir Brahmin can come often enough and enjoy the lectures as she has been doing for most of the season. So thank you all of you. Ali, my apologies for delaying you. About Ali Majid, I need only tell you that his views on Sadequain are considered. His exposure to Sadequain is immense, not least of all because he hides his masterpieces from his brother Naman and me. Together as a trio, we hope to exhibit under Naman and Ali's curation another big Sadequain exhibition of Sadequain in Paris. But before that, he's here to share many years of research with you. Thank you, Ali.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Others, it's absolutely wonderful to be here in these beautiful premises, talking about art to a few hundred people. It provides a wonderful respite from all that's going on outside us today. But art does provide some sort of escape, some sort of respite from time to time. I would like to start by thanking a few people. Hameed Haroon for the invitation to share some thoughts with you. Hameed's considerable achievements in matters Sadequain and the cultural space in general are well known. The Grosvenor Gallery in London for the exhibition Sadequain in Paris, and the publication of the book accompanying the event, which is an important contribution to the subject, not because it is the only one so far. Noman Majid for his criticism and insights that helped clear some areas of confusion, while giving my somewhat haphazard thoughts the necessary coherence. Laila Majid for organizing the slides. Yes, in case you're wondering, part of this is a family business. And of course, to all of you for taking the time out today to be here. I will not be talking about Sadequain the mystic, Sadequain the poet, Sadequain the ascetic, Sadequain Bal and Fairs, Sadequain and Mughal court culture, etc. You get the general drift. I will be talking about his art. Anything. Sadequain lived and worked in many cities: Karachi, Paris, New York, Delhi, Lahore, to name a few. In some, his stay was short. In others, longer. Prolific and industrious that he was, he painted wherever he went, and usually left his work behind as he moved on, primarily as gifts to the city itself and to those that hosted him there. Between 1958 and 1968, he does his most engaging work. The arithmetic tells us that he spent a large part of this time in Paris. However, geography is less important than the direction his work takes. Besides, he was traveling frequently back and forth while he was in Paris. I will begin with a few years preceding his departure for Paris, move on to the years 61 to 68, follow with a few comments on his work after his return to Pakistan, and close with some comments on a particular interpretation of Sadequain's work in academic circles. I refer to Iftikhar Dadi's piece in his book on Sadequain, which is very good, but has a few problems that we'll address very later. Hopefully, this will put things in some sort of an interesting perspective. In case it doesn't, you can blame Hameed. The years preceding Sadequain's departure for Paris can be segmented into two distinct phases in his practice. For the sake of convenience, let's call the first the pre-Ghadani phase and the second the Ghadani phase. Before Sadequain sets himself up in Ghadani, his deep engagement with Western and Hindustani art is apparent. His exposure to both, especially the former, was through images in magazines, catalogs, and books, like most artists in Pakistan at the time. Let us look at some paintings. Can we just zoom the slides? There we are. Now, I don't think that the organizers of this event are giving out any prizes. For,
Did you read the title every time?
okay. This is called The Three Braces, painted in 1958-59. I don't think that the organizers of this event will give out any prizes for guessing the influence here. The perspective, the face, the lines, all point to the same source. Next. European theme, European painting. This is called Europa and the Pool. I need to say that, it's quite obvious. The point is that Picasso is a massive presence in modern art. And you can't simply avoid him. He can either be the elephant in the room or someone you engage with. Best to engage with him, see if he has something to give you, which you may want to keep, and move on. This is what Sadequain did. Next. Here, Hindustani signifiers sit with European influence. El Greco, notice the elongated fingers that Sadequain will develop into his own as time goes on. Cubism, notice the face, the shoulders, etc. These things share the canvas with bangles, with the lamp, with the moon. It seems that Jamini Roy has joined the party. Next. Jamini Roy's influence is a strong presence. Picasso's portrait of Marie-Thérèse Walter also comes to mind, but so on. Calligraphy as written script is absent in these paintings. By calligraphy, I mean something specific, and I want to emphasize it. I think that calligraphy is the totality of letter, word, a line, and one or several sequences of lines, which I call the scripted text. The letters of the alphabet and the punctuation marks are going to appear in Sadequain's work soon, not as scripted text of prose and verse, but as formal stylistic devices that generate images. The geometry of the letter will lend itself to the construction of the abstract image. And Sadequain will exploit this condition brilliantly as he takes it to higher and higher levels of complexity between 1961 and 1968. He will work feverishly with alphabet and form, and it is the highly effective interplay of the two that he structures which constitutes the significant watershed in his practice and enables him to deliver his most complex and, I would argue, his best work. The exploration which will generate the synthesis begins in Gadani, to which we now turn. Slide. What the naked eye sees in Gadani is this: formidable, striking, etc., etc. Next. What Sadequain sees is this. Next. This is untitled. That one was called Making Love Sorry. That's what he sees. Two pictures on the same theme, letter and form, as you see, have started to come together. And this is basically him on his way to making the breakthrough that will crystallize in Gadani and carry on in Paris. Next. The same here. This is called Symphony in Blue and Ochre. Next. Both are self-portraits. I think the roots and branches on the left and the self-portrait on the right. Clearly, the cacti of Gadani have now come right to the forefront and have somehow merged with hands, with limbs, and the alphabet is lurking somewhere behind. Sadequain has become inseparable from what he sees and paints. Next. What he does not see clearly is this. Next. So, to conclude the first part of this talk, what begins in 1955 as that will soon become that. Left is what he starts with, right is where he is going to go. Clearly, his work in Gadani has moved to a completely different level. Abstraction dominates. Now, Hameed, do you wish me to stop and talk to me, or do you wish me to continue? Oh, next. Okay, then before that. Right. A lot has been said and written about the symbolic significance of the cactus in Sadequain's work. Before alienation, humanity's triumph against hugely challenging odds, and so on. But a bit less about it, as the space where letter and form come together in his mind. The formal aspect is hugely significant, as this is where he makes the breakthrough. Sadequain will rework the cactus form through the alphabet and deliver a number of arrestingly complex images. To quote the man himself, and I quote, "In the anatomy of these gigantic plants, I found the essence of calligraphy. Everything that I have painted since then, a city like Rawalpindi, buildings, a forest, a boat, a table or a chair, a man, a mother and child, or a woman, has been based on calligraphy, which itself issues from the structure of the cactus." Notice that he does not even mention the written script. Clearly, Sadequain's concern here is the alphabet and form, and the two together as image, and not the scripted text. There are some key ideas here which we should look into briefly. If essence can only be discovered through an examination of form, it must appear. When Sadequain says that he discovered the essence of calligraphy in the cacti of Gadani, what he is saying, at least to me, is that the alphabet lends itself to the construction of form, and it is the coming together of the two that enriches both. A vulgar interpretation would be a reductive one and should be avoided if we are to understand his art in and as a totality, underpinned by the brilliance with which he synthesizes alphabetic form to generate image. He will go on to develop a lattice-like space wherein the image acquires detail, depth, and movement. Okay. Sadequain leaves for Paris in 1961. Just to give you an idea as to what is going on in the city, I would like to mention a few things. Paris is anything but uneventful. 1961 is the year in which Picasso has sketched a portrait of Jamila Bupasha, an FNLA activist brutally tortured by the French police. It is also the year in which Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, the most damning critique of colonial oppression, has come out to great applause and appreciation. Thirdly, it is the year in which Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless appears and almost symbolizes the French New Wave. In 4 years' time, Sartre will refuse the Nobel Prize. By 1968, Paris will be burning. So these are the years in which our man is in Paris. Of course, the art scene is also contributing to this climate of protest and question. What seems, with hindsight, to be the relatively straightforward Cubist project with Picasso and Braque's critique of verisimilitude, beauty, dimension, space, has moved on. And now a new art is beginning to emerge. I think it would be useful to look at some examples. Like, this is Yves Klein, an American living in Paris, painting in 1960. Next. This is a Jean-Pierre Vasserly, again, something that is happening in Paris at the time that Sadequain is there. Next. This is Niki Sanfal, painting a picture and shooting holes in it with a gun. Next. This is Jean Tinguely, which is again, he's living in Paris, and this he paints in 1960. Clearly, Sadequain has no trouble with all this. And I think it has to do with the fact that he has a very good idea as to where he wants his art to go. He will spend time in Paris sketching Picasso-like pictures, but these are basically notes, because this is the first time he's seeing all that in flesh. But he has a very clear idea, and he keeps away from all this. Next. In 1962, Sadequain paints The Last Supper, which wins the prize and provides him with the means to extend his stay in the city. This is a study for The Last Supper. Fortunately, quite a few studies of Sadequain's major works are available and have come at auction. And they give you a very interesting idea as to what he's doing. The geometry of the alphabet, with its arcs, its curves and dots, sometimes appearing as squares, and the cacti of Gadani have come together to generate a group of figures. The image, through this complexity of abstraction, is anything but still. Notice the lattice around that is beginning to form. The finished work next. The finished work appears less crowded because he lights it up a bit. Alphabet and form almost dance together. The foundation is set. With time, he will elongate and constrain the lattice, giving the resulting image greater complexity and even greater movement. Sadequain has defined his playing field and will continue working within it for the next few years. Next. The seated figures of the Last Supper appeared a bit later as dances. Painted in Karachi in 1963, the huge potential of the synthesis of letter and form is brilliantly expressed here. The title is Dancing Figures, but it is much more. This is abstraction at a high level of complexity. And I guess vice versa. Whatever it is, it pulls you in, and the eye moves around the lattice and doesn't know when to move out of it. Next. The interplay of form and image in the lattice moves forward, and the complexity of the image begins to be highlighted. Next. It generates the urban landscape. Judgment in Paris, 1963. As you could see, we have the urban landscape now, but the tools which go to generate it remain the same. Next. This is untitled, like a lot of his other paintings, and again, it is a theme on the urban landscape that he is working on. Next. It becomes the seated figures. This is called the group of seated figures, 1963. Look at the detail. See what he is doing in terms of his duplicate in generating abstraction. Next. And now the urban landscape and the human form come together. It's called a group of standing figures, but it could easily well be a group of standing buildings. Next, letters are softened as they structure the human form, but the resulting image cannot be reduced to the letter. It is again that interplay of alphabetic form and image generation. Next. This is quite interesting. 1962, untitled Three Figures. The painting, the image on the left is the picture as he shows it. I have inverted the image on the right. Makes equal sense, I think. One is figures looking down and one is figures looking up. And the letters are there. Next. I do the same here. Left, the picture as it is. Right, the picture inverted. Next. Reflection is a theme that Sadequain is exploring. And it all comes together in Reflections on the Bank of the Seine, 1962, which, to my mind, is the apex of his work in Paris. Everything that I have spoken about is here. The detail, the lattice, the letters, the forms, it's all come together. This is where Sadequain in Paris is at his best, and I'm not saying it because this is in Hameed Haroon's collection. As an aside, what I did was, just to get it clear, I inverted the image so the reflection becomes the real thing. It is allegedly the Eiffel Tower, but is it? And I owe this insight to Noman Majid. He pointed it out to me. On the right, you have something called Tatlin's Tower, which is Vladimir Tatlin's monument to the Third International, commissioned by Stalin, but never gets built. As you can see, Sadequain's exposure to Russian constructivism and futurism is also apparent. Yeah, he keeps away from Nicky Saint-Phal and Yves Tanguy and all that, but he is aware of this stuff. And whether that has to do with the socialist orientation or not, but he is aware of what's going on. And I think that it's not the Eiffel Tower, but something between the Eiffel and Tatlin. Next. Now, this is a picture that he paints at a very early stage in his life in 1960. Look at it, and look at it closely, because there is a method to my madness here. Let it be flipped back and compare it to this. Isn't it blindingly obvious how far Sadequain has come in these 2 or 3 years? Can we have the C guy again? See that and look at that once again. And I think this is quite important. I need to emphasize. He has moved on, and he moves on with leaps and bounds. But he is getting tired. One of the most talked about, or the most talked about part of Sadequain's work in Paris are the lithographs that support l'étranger. Now, Albert Camus is a very important man in French literature. France is very keen on, supposed to be on backing literature, the French government. And Sadequain is invited by the Royal Automobile Club in Paris to illustrate and support the anniversary edition of Camus' L'Étranger. These paintings, and I've taken a few, are beautifully executed, they are warm, they are colorful, but this is not what he is doing in Paris or what he is doing in terms of his art. He seems to be saying, yes, I can do this, but cheekily he inserts pen and ink drawings in the text to tell you what he is really doing. Next, and that's that. See the similarity between what he was doing in Verdun, what he is doing in Paris, and what he's doing here. Of course, the invitation to illustrate Camus' L'Étranger is an invitation to a select club. Delacroix has done Faust, Matisse has done Mallarmé, Baudelaire, even Joyce. Yves Saint Laurent, who was a very good draftsman, has done Madame Bovary, Flaubert. But this is an invitation to do something, but what he's really doing is this. Next. Towards the end of his life, towards the end of his final stay in Paris, Sadequain executes about 20 to 25 large canvases for a planned solo show in Marseille. The size of these canvases is significant. They're about 10 feet by 6 feet or 12 feet by 8 feet. And enables him to expand the images that he has painted before. He is now expanding the things that we see moving around in the lattice that I mentioned before. The detail of the Last Supper, dancing figures, sitting figures on the banks of the Seine, has been replaced by a deftly executed magnification. Explicit here is the expansion of segments moving around in the lattice, as I said, in the earlier paintings. He seems to be tiring of it and wants to move on to stay. Sadly, the show never took place. The painting stayed in Paris and began to appear at auction only in the last 20 years. Virtually all of these are now in private collections, with, from what I have learned, a few in the permanent collections of 2 very large national museums in the West. Return to Pakistan. In 1968, Sadequain returns to Pakistan, leaves Paris for good, and true to form, he leaves all his work behind, and does not even make a half-hearted attempt to get it across to Paris. He is moving on, yet again. But this time, what he moves to is not a patch on what he moves from. In the last 19 years of his life, he will primarily execute murals, calligraph verses from the Quran, and write his portraits. That the political climate of the time must have been supportive of this calligraphy, must have helped matters. But Verdun and Paris continue to appear sporadically. This was done a few months before he died. So we can, just a few closing remarks. As art historians have written about Sadequain, it is important to take a brief look of some of what has been put out there. And I'm getting a bit controversial now, so I hope you will excuse me. Sadequain charted, according to Iftikhar Dadi, and I quote, Sadequain charted a singular trajectory in enacting a paradoxical subjectivity. Hence, the specificity of Sadequain appears as a paradox. The paradox is then explained. Sadequain remained close to national aesthetic ideologies that promoted calligraphy under the increasing Islamization of the 1970s and 1980s, yet maintained a persona that simultaneously relayed aspects of transgressive Indo-Persian Sufism into a dialogue with transnational modernism during the 1950s and 60s in order to create a modernist language characterized here as calligraphic modernism. The unresolvable contradiction is specified as the one between Islamization on the one hand and the exchange between European modernism and Indo-Persian mysticism on the other. Ignoring for the moment the jaw-breaking weight of the language used, I find this confusing. If we are separating the progressive Sadequain of the 50s and the 60s from the conservative Sadequain of later years, we are then talking about different phases in his art. And he is not the only artist who paints in different styles during his career or even changes his or her ideological orientation. If we accept that this is the case, then the aggregation of the whole body of his work as a paradox, even though it sounds cute, is not really justified. Now, Dadi goes on to say a lot of other things, and I'm just trying to figure it out from my text here. But it goes on, he also says that Sadequain reinterpreted Western modernism by pulverizing it into a calligraphic world. Now again, I find that difficult to understand. That's like saying that Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, which is a major breakthrough in art, recasts Western notions of desire and sexuality in a world of African masks. Does not make sense. So basically, having said all that, I would like to leave you with just a few points. The first is that the breakthrough that Sadequain makes is the transition from what he was doing before to generating a synthesis of image and letter, of letter and form to generate image. Second, his work in Paris is not to be found at its best in the illustrations that accompany L'Étranger. Third, what he does after he returns to Pakistan only underscores the brilliance of what he has done before. I often wonder if Sadequain almost stopped painting in the last 18 or 15 years of his life. The more I think about it, the more convinced I am that he actually did. Thank you.
Okay, Ali, don't think you can get away without a serious grilling.
Ignatius of Loyola and the Spanish Inquisition, yes, go on.
Well, you stop behaving like St. Francis Xavier and go on.
Perhaps the CC is better.
But you are by no means a pacifist. You've made a very controversial series of statements. They gripped very firmly on Sadequain's work. But since we changed the structure at the last minute out of spontaneity, correctly, to let Ali speak about the images, I think it's important now. You've taken certain shortcuts in your exposition with the creation of forms. I want to specifically start by asking you that there is this relationship between the calligraphic form of the alphabet as opposed to the text and the cactus or the hands which sometimes turn into cactus and the copulation which seems to subsist on cactuses. I won't go too deeply into that because I remember one horrified Arab lady, a very conservative background, asked me in London, do you mean to say these are explicit images of copulation? The sad news is, or the happy news is, they are images of creation and copulation. And the point is, they're not primarily sexual images. They're images which have to do with self-sustained reproduction in the cycle that Sadequain speaks of. Having said so much, I want you to come back specifically to one thing: the relationship between the alphabetic form as opposed to the text and the other forms that were absorbed into his vocabulary in Gadani. In the blue and ochre period, how do they start, what do they indicate, and what happens in the more powerfully graphic, black and bold Paris period?
Yeah. I think the important thing is that all these things you mentioned indicate a journey towards all the things that you mentioned indicate a journey towards abstraction. Okay? And the pictures I showed before are not as abstract or as complicated or as complex as the ones I showed later. That's the first part. The second part is form and the calligraphic form and the letter. I think that the calligraphic form is the totality of scripted text, which is constituted by letter, which becomes words, which becomes sequences. That is why usually calligraphy is written either as verse or as supporting stories or whatever else. It's stylized, right? So that is basically what I think the calligraphic form is. I don't think the calligraphic form is the letter. The letter is a constituent of the calligraphic form that is much greater than the letter itself.
I'm explicitly asking you to clarify. If you go to the Bayaz-e Sadequaini or the 1969 introduction to a major text of Sadequain, the introduction to the Bayaz, which is translated in the Holy Sinner and which you have read and which you're very familiar with, speaks explicitly how certain letters of the alphabet correspond to certain forms. For example, he says that the Alif is masculine, he says the Noon is feminine, and there is the famous incident, I know you sort of who all this, the M.F. Hussain incident, absolutely, where Sadequain and Hussain are sitting together. Hussain writes about it subsequently, and he is drawing a woman with two breasts. And the two breasts are two noons, or the end letter in the alphabet. And M.F. Hussain turns to Sadequain and says, Sadequain, if a mullah was to walk in at this point and you had these two noons, what would you do? And Sadequain takes, with great calligraphy, with great calligraphic flair, the text which you would know, and says, I would make it Ainul Yaqeen. So there's a little bit of mischief up there, which you seem to be gliding over, which you're very familiar with. Can you say something about it?
No, of course. There is mischief, there is manual dexterity, there is talent, and all the rest of it. The point that I'm trying to make is a bit different, which is that, yes, you can convert the noon into Ainul Yaqeen. That's fine, that's not a problem. Historically, you can convert the meme into something else. That's not the problem. But my issue is that what Sadequain is after is the image. He's after the breast, not the writing.
I think Ali is becoming more alarming as time goes on. Ali, I want to ask you something else. I think that you seem to imply a move towards abstraction. I'm being very clear in my language, it's not that I disagree with you. You seem to imply a move towards abstraction as a form of artistic maturity and development, which it may well be in Sadequain's case. But I look at some of the later works, not as regressions, but as a vernacular popularization back in Pakistan. And I also think that there are elements of schizophrenia, of cultural schizophrenia in Sadequain's character. I don't think the calligraphy is simply a form of popularization for Ziaul Haq's patronage. There is also, what doesn't fit in your model are the giant grand murals at Mangla, which are outside this model and which need to be explained. That level and size of work is virtually unheard of in this country, and I won't let you get away with that comment.
No, that's fine. First of all, I was talking about the Paris years in terms of the context of what happens before and what happens afterwards. My objective is to pinpoint the difference, and I call that difference development. Fine. Now, your question was that that's not really Islamist ideology, it's something else. That's fine. I do not disagree with that. But don't forget that for the last 15, 16 years of his life, a lot of work that he did was writing his own poems, right, in large scale, right, and putting a head on it or putting someone's hair on it, etc. That goes to my point that he is doing something different. What I feel is that what he's doing that is different does not stack up well in terms of his artistic expertise relative to what he was doing before. As far as the murals are concerned, yes, the scale is enormous. And he has done that even before he goes to Paris, which is the State Bank one, 562, 63 years old. He is experimenting with scale. But my problem with murals is that there is an arbitrage between scale and balance that doesn't quite work. The exception here is Marco. I mean, he does it, but he doesn't populate it with lots of things. With Sadequain, the canvas, the scale is huge, the population on the scale is huge as well. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Ali, for example, I think I tend to be in agreement with you, but I have certain problems. There is a vernacular sitting within Sadequain. Take a sophisticated painting that you pointed out, which my friend Majid is fond of reminding me is a seated figure, and I tell him the seated figure doesn't help explain why the Eiffel Tower or the other structure, the urban structure that Ali spoke of, is inverted. But actually, it goes back to the Amroha philosophy class. It goes back to the Platonic cave. It goes back to the town which is on the other side of the Seine. If you go and lie down on one of the benches of the Seine at night, somewhere near, I suppose, where the Centre Georges Pompidou is, and look across, you will see that same series of lights and reflections reflected in the Seine. But there is one difference there I think I'd like to bring out. You see those lights, but it is that Amroha Platonic cave where what is across the Seine in the painting is not Paris, it's one of the small villages along the Seine before you enter Paris. The reflection of the lights in the water, however, is Paris, is perhaps the Eiffel Tower or something close, and is perhaps the Seine. This idea of the Platonic cave, the calligraphic figure sitting seated, all this also points out to, let's take an earlier Allah Tohra, which is Alexander's concubine humiliates Aristotle. Take some of the drawings and some of the lithographs in L'Étranger. The constant appearance of the Allah form and in the blazoned form means that that calligraphic, not text, but alphabet has tohras. I want you to speak about the emblazonment of these alphabets into forms, into meaning, into vernacular culture, a kind of schizophrenic Sadequain, as he lost his skill on the exciting new abstraction. At the same time, the vernacular continued to throw out new areas of visual creativity. If you're a purist like Ali, the move from abstraction to figurative art is perhaps a deep progressivity, but I want his comment on it, because you come to hear it, not me.
First of all, to the last point, it's not deep progressivity, it's something different. It may work for a few people, it doesn't work for me, and I've given you reasons why it doesn't work for me. As far as this alphabet and Tohra and all that and the vernacular is concerned, I think none of us can avoid the emotional and conceptual legacy that we carry within us, right? That comes through. What I think is important is to look at a painting or a sketch as the best representative of what is going on in the mind of the person painting it. Now, whether it refers to the Rig Veda or the Upanishads or the Quran or the caves of Amroha, that to my mind is secondary. I may be wrong, but the ideological and the conceptual underpinnings of an artistic creation or a production are important, but to my mind secondary. That's what I feel. And I may be wrong.
You may be wrong and you may be right. Now, Ali, away from your position as an austere banker at the lectern, could you please stand up, walk to the front with your mic, and sum up in your last series of phrases what it is that moves you about Sadequain, so your audience can participate with you in this wonderful encounter.
I thought I clarified that considerably. I mean, what moves one about anything is basically the part that one understands and the part that one strives to understand, the unsaid bits, the part that one keeps on going back to the artwork to work out. What I find incredibly impressive and touching in Sadequain's work is the sheer complexity, which is incredibly well executed. But that story ends, sadly for me, in 1968. But then, if he's done 10, 12, 15 great canvases, who wants more? It'll just be problematic. I hope that satisfies.
I think Adila Suleiman was nodding vigorously when Ali made that last statement. Yes, the fact is, Ali's exposition of the Paris period is brilliant. It doesn't pretend to tell the story of the complete Sadequain. It doesn't wish to tell the story of the complete Sadequain. It tells the story of Sadequain in Paris. Ladies and gentlemen, I think a wonderful round of applause for an exciting new breakthrough in Sadequain studies. And that too by a banker, shared on the Pakistani art community. I will request Simon, can you get your musicians up there? You can do what you like. Simon, where are your musicians? Where are the fakirs? I want to speak to you now why this is important. I want to link it to Sadequain. The Surat. It's a short 20-minute recital. I urge you to sit through it. It is, in a way, Muhatta's tribute to Sadequain and a tribute to Sadequain's intellectual thought and philosophical thought, that which emerged from that school in Amroha, which Ali likes to sometimes forget. It is the story of Surat. Surat was the queen of Junagadh in Gujarat. She gave birth to a child. And the Purohits and Brahmins told her that the child would likely kill his father one day. So the child was taken from the Junagadh palace and cast on a rock outside Gujarat. And in that period, some wandering minstrels and Sufis found him, who played the surando and took him along. The boy Bijal grew up playing the surindo, and the other side of the paradoxical irony is that his father was enamored of music, as most Sufis are, to the extent of doing anything possible to listen to music that moved him. When he heard the grown-up Bijal 20 years later playing the surindo outside his doors, he invited him in, and Bijal wouldn't come in. And then there are the rumblings of the Queen Surat. Surat is the parallel rag to Des from the northern Indian raga family, and Surat has a couple of surs different from Des. It has a different Aroi and Amroi as well. But this is the foreboding of Surat, the desire of Rai Dayaj, the king, to do anything. And when he promises that he will do anything with Bijal if he plays from in his empty court, Bijal, after he finishes playing, asks for his head. The surrender of that head is the Sufi's desire to be able to give even his head, as my friend Nasreen Askari is used to quoting Al-Bani Shimel, had I 100 heads, I would not have given each of them more willingly than I will do now. And so he gives his head, and that is the end of Rai Dayaj. But it is the Sarmat figure, the Sarbakaf, that predominates the vernacular vocabulary of Sadequain in the late 60s, that is glued to the Rag Sorat. So a collection of a small Rag Sorat, a small Tilang, and a Sindhi Bhairavi on the Surindo by Khamiso Fakir. Khamiso Fakir is the brother of the great Muhammad Fakir, the younger brother. And Khamiso and Muhammad Fakir's father, Professor Keti Bandar, it's basically, or Mirpur Sakro, it's basically a Sakro Gharana for the Surindo, which is played in Central Asia, played in Iraq, played in Southern Iran, played in Balochistan, and played in Sindh, and nowhere else. For you, for Sadequain, for the Sadequain community today, a tribute to Sadequain, the Sur Sorat, the Surindo, and of course, Khamiso Fakir.
Honored guests in the first row, no less, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. Oh my God. I can always rely on Akbar to steal the show. Shukriya, Akbar. So I was wishing you Assalamu alaikum and good evening. I would like to, at the outset, thank Hameed Haroon and Ali Majid for a highly spirited and controversy-filled interpretation of the art of Sadequain. Ali Majid in particular deserves our thanks, as he has traveled a long way, having braved misguided Iranian missiles on the way. Although Sadequain was an enigma to many of us, he was, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, a Renaissance man. He could turn his hand to a number of the creative arts. He could paint, sketch, draw, and he was a skilled calligrapher. He composed and recited poetry, devotional and abstract, and ingeniously married alphabet and form, as Ali Majid explained to us in detail. But finally, he would remain in a state of transcendental intoxication as he sought to wield his brush for as long as his patron could ply him with the golden nectar. Sadequain's vast corpus of work includes many magnificent large murals, which are a source of inspiration and continue as such for young artists and older ones as well. Finally, too, for me, on behalf of the Mahatta Palace Museum, its trustees, its staff, and its well-wishers, I will take this opportunity to thank them all for their support and their fond wishes. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Khamiso Faqir, Tahanji Vadi Vadi Mehrbani Faqir, Tahanji Sathiun ji, and of course all of you here as an appreciative audience for joining us to celebrate the 25th birthday of the museum. Please help yourselves to some tea. Thank you.